In most neighborhoods, it's the little things that connect people. The friendly wave, the occasional borrowed tool, or the smile exchanged across a lawn. But in this case, the connection came in the form of a gift. An unwanted gift. It started with something simple. A gift, left neatly at her doorstep one morning. There was no note, no explanation, just a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. A little strange, but maybe just a harmless gesture. When she opened it, she found a doll. It wasn't something new or cute. It was old, fragile. Its eyes seemed to follow her, unblinking. The kind of gift that lingers in your mind long after you've put it away. She told herself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor trying to be kind. Maybe a forgotten delivery. But the next morning, there was another gift. This time the box was bigger, heavier. The brown paper torn at the edges, as if it had been wrapped in a hurry. Again, no note. Just another gift, left in silence. Inside were keys. Rusted, ancient, heavy in her hand. She didn't know what they unlocked, or why they were given to her. But she couldn't shake the feeling that these weren't just objects. They were messages. The gifts were no longer just strange. They were unsettling. A message she couldn't yet decipher. But the worst was yet to come. By the third gift, she had begun to feel it, the sense of being watched, of someone lurking just out of view. Every time she checked the window, she thought she saw a movement, a shadow, a figure disappearing into the background. But it was always too quick, too faint. When the third gift came, it was different, larger, wrapped in something that wasn't paper. It smelled of dampness, and when she touched it, her fingers recoiled. Something was very wrong. Inside was a dead bird, not freshly killed but stuffed, posed as if frozen in time. It wasn't just a gift anymore. It was a warning. She stopped opening the gifts after that. Each morning, they appeared like clockwork, each more disturbing than the last. But there was one thing that terrified her the most. No matter how early she woke up, no matter how late she stayed up, she never saw who was leaving them. She thought about calling the police, but something in her gut told her not to. What if it made things worse? What if it angered them? One night it wasn't a package that woke her, it was a loud bang. She froze, her heart racing, the air thick with dread. This time, the package was different, larger, and something was leaking from the bottom, something wet. She couldn't bring herself to open it. The smell that rose from the package, it was the smell of rot, decay. And then she heard it. Footsteps. Faint, but unmistakable. Whoever had been leaving the gifts was still out there, watching, waiting. Morning came, and with it the final gift. The note was simple, direct. And in that moment she realized this wasn't just a game. It was a promise. There's something unnerving about a quiet neighborhood. From the outside, it seems perfect, peaceful. The kind of place where people exchange pleasantries, kids ride bikes in the street, and windows are left open to let in the breeze. But not all windows should be left open, and not all neighbors are friendly. For months, he couldn't shake the feeling. Every day, every night, like clockwork, there was always someone watching. The neighbor across the street, never moving, never blinking, just staring, day after day, night after night. It started small. A glance out the window. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a shadow in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it wasn't. Every time he looked, they were there. No matter the hour, no matter the day, the figure never left, never wavered. What kind of person just sits there, watching, day and night? And why? For what purpose? His rational mind told him there had to be an explanation, but every answer felt hollow. A gut feeling, a deep, instinctual dread, told him something was terribly, terribly wrong. He wasn't the only one who noticed. It became the talk of the neighborhood, whispered conversations over backyard fences, speculations, rumors. Some said the person was harmless, just a lonely old man. Others weren't so sure. He tried to make sense of it. Maybe they were sick. Maybe they had nowhere else to go. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Something sinister lurked behind that blank, emotionless stare. Then came the nights when the staring grew more intense. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it. A pressure, like the figure was trying to reach into his very thoughts, invading his mind, and it terrified him. Finally, he decided to confront the neighbor. Enough was enough. The fear had gnawed at him long enough. He was going to find out who, or what, was behind that window. But no one answered. And yet, they were there. He could see the figure, clearer than ever, framed perfectly in the window. How could someone sit there, so still, for so long? His heart raced. That night, something changed. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he knew whatever was watching him wasn't content to stay in that window anymore. The line had been crossed. The watching wasn't confined to the window anymore. It was everywhere. He could feel eyes on him, always, even when he wasn't looking. And the sounds, they grew louder, more insistent. There was never any escaping it. The moment he noticed, it was already too late. And now, it was coming for him. In every neighborhood, there's that one house. The one that seems just a little different. Maybe the grass isn't as neatly trimmed. Or maybe the lights never quite shine the way they should. But for one man, it wasn't the appearance that bothered him. It was the smell. It started off faint, a smell that drifted in on the wind every so often. He thought nothing of it at first. After all, houses have their quirks. But this was different. The first time he noticed it, he assumed it was something simple. Maybe old trash left out a little too long. Maybe a forgotten compost pile. But as the days passed, the smell didn't fade. It grew worse. It was thick, heavy, a smell that clung to your clothes, that you could taste on the back of your tongue. It was the kind of smell that made your skin crawl, the kind that made you feel something was wrong. Curiosity got the better of him. One evening he decided to ask. It was a simple conversation at first, polite, casual, but the moment the door opened, he was hit with a wave of it. The explanation was simple enough. Plumbing problems. Easy to believe, at least for a moment. But the look in their eyes, the way they rushed to close the door, something wasn't right. As the days went on, the smell became worse. It wasn't just outside anymore. It seemed to seep through his own walls, filling his home with that same nauseating stench. Sleep became impossible. The air felt thick, oppressive, like it was closing in on him. He wasn't the only one who noticed. Others on the street had started talking, whispering, but no one seemed willing to confront it. Every time someone asked the neighbor about the smell, they were given the same excuse. Just plumbing issues. One night, when the smell had reached its peak, he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Moving outside his window. And that's when he saw it. His neighbor, dragging something heavy. Something wrapped in a large, dark bag. The kind of bag you don't take to the trash. The kind you bury. His heart raced, his mind spinning with questions he didn't want answers to. What was in the bag? Why was it being dragged out in the middle of the night? And more importantly, What had been causing that awful smell? He knew it was dangerous. He knew he shouldn't look. But the curiosity, the need to know, was too strong. He crept around the house, keeping low, until he reached the backyard. And that's when it hit him. The smell. There, in the back corner of the yard, was a patch of freshly dug earth. The soil was still damp, the edges uneven. And just beneath the surface, something was buried. His stomach turned and his heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what was buried there, but he didn't need to. Whatever it was the source of the smell. And he wasn't sticking around to find out more. He couldn't take it anymore. The smell, the secrets, the silence. He had to do something. But as he picked up the phone to call the police, there was a knock at his door. It was them, the neighbor. Standing on his porch, smiling that same strange smile, the same one they had when they talked about the plumbing. And in that moment he knew, whatever was buried in that yard, whatever was causing that smell, it wasn't done, and neither was the neighbor. Be careful what you investigate. Some things are better left buried. If you're enjoying these stories so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your support motivates us to keep creating even more great content. Now back to our final story. In every neighborhood, there's always that one house, the one that feels off. It doesn't stand out in any obvious way. The lawn might be a little overgrown, the paint slightly faded, but there's something else, something more unsettling. For years, this house kept to itself. The curtains never opened. Not for sunlight, not for the fresh air. Neighbors would walk by, glance over, but no one ever really knew what was happening behind those thick, drawn curtains. Until one day, someone decided to take a closer look. It wasn't always this way. When the house was first bought, everything seemed normal. But as time passed, the curtains remained drawn. Day in, day out, never a glimpse of the inside. And soon, it became part of the neighborhood's silent lore. Have you ever seen anyone over there? The people who live in that house? One of them asked. Not once. It's been years. Feels like the place is completely empty now, the other replied. But one neighbor was different. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Curiosity grew, gnawing at her. And one evening, she decided to do what no one else had dared to. She peeked inside. It was a small decision, just a quick peek. What harm could there be? But as she pulled the curtain aside, even for just a second, she saw something that would change everything. Inside, the room was frozen in time. Like a photograph, everything was perfectly still. But it wasn't the stillness that disturbed her. It was the people. The figures inside weren't moving. They were sitting, their faces locked in eerie, blank expressions, like wax statues posed in a moment long forgotten. It was as if time itself had stopped, or something had stopped them. Panic set in. What had she just seen? Who were those people? Were they alive? Her mind raced with questions, but no answers came. And that's when the whispering started. At first it was faint, just a whisper. Maybe it was nothing. But as the night went on, the voices grew louder, unclear, distorted, but unmistakable. They were coming from the house with the closed curtains. Desperation took hold. She had to know what was going on. She had to find out what was happening behind those curtains. But when she knocked, no one answered. The door opened, but no one was there to greet her. The house was silent, but not empty. Those same lifeless figures sat at the table, their eyes staring into nothingness, their bodies as rigid as before. But this time, Something was different. They weren't in the same position. Their heads had turned. Just a fraction. Just enough to know they were watching. Against every instinct, she kept going, step by step through the stillness toward the heart of the house. She reached a door at the end of the hallway, a door that felt different. What lay behind that door would answer everything. But some answers are worse than the questions. And then she saw it. The reflection in the mirror. Her own image. Frozen. Lifeless. Just like the others. She had become part of the house. Another figure behind the closed curtains. A prisoner. Forever trapped in stillness. Be careful what you uncover. Sometimes, looking inside is the last thing you'll ever do. If you loved this episode, be sure to check out our other videos. Thank you for watching. See you on our next video.